now from University of Ottawa, and he rejoins us now on 680 CJOB. Those numbers are hard to decipher just based on the reporting of different nations, different provinces, different states, I would gather.
Oh, yeah. And it's an undercount for sure. We don't know of all the people who have truly died, or all the people who have been affected even cursorily by this disease. Now, it's not the most deadly pandemic in history. Even the Spanish flu of 1918 is thought to have killed 20 to 50 million, and previous pandemics killed even more. But in a modern society, 6 million is a very large number, and certainly the economic and societal effects have been crippling.
Is this near a conclusion in your view? Are we getting close to the end?
Well, it depends the end of what. Close to the end of the need for societal closure, I think locally in Canada, yes, that is the case. Close to the end of the pandemic as a whole, maybe not. We still have much of the world has not been vaccinated and don't have access to much of the same mitigation measures that we do. But I think we're probably closer to the end than we are to the beginning. Don't quote me on that. A number of things can happen still. Um, what we've got out of this, though, is knowledge about how to prepare for the next big public health crises. So I think there's some good to be taken from this as well, but a lot of bad as well.
Now, the conflict in Ukraine, of course, is a large distraction to worldwide vaccination efforts, and COVAX, which has been very successful since it's been instigated. But, really until we have widespread coverage in some of those third world countries where there are large swaths of unvaccinated people, the chance for another variant to arise out of it is still there.
Yeah, it's always there. And we can't predict when it will arise and whether or not a new variant will be a bigger problem than the current variant because it happens more or less randomly. But this is why it has to be a priority to flood the world with vaccination and to upgrade our existing vaccination to account for the existing variants. It's an arms race. To bring it back to the war metaphor, it's an arms race of us against the virus. And we have the capacity to win that arms race. It just takes political will and sufficient resources.
Now, the Omicron wave on its way down, Raywat, of course, here in Canada. Is it enough to say that that is what any future wave would look like, or would it depend largely on the variant itself? We saw a lot of people getting sick. I know a lot of people in my inner circle did get it, but in the most case, and I do have a lot of younger friends, of course, too, everyone suffered mostly mild symptoms and was able to get over it.
So waves happen because there are a large number of susceptible people still. And waves happen because we haven't got the right mitigation tools to prevent them from happening. So as new variants arise, will they still be able to infect people who've already been infected? And do we have sufficient numbers of susceptible people to be infected? The answer is yes. We have a lot of people still who are susceptible, people who have not been vaccinated and people who are prone for reinfection. So additional waves might resemble the current one, or they might not. We just don't know. But to answer your question, it does matter a fair bit on the nature of the variant, what comes next.
With Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa, with us on 680 CJOB. Skylar in for Julie this week. Richard Kluche reporting. As far as masks are concerned, I know that pretty well where I go beginning next week when that is relaxed, I'm going to be wearing my mask at most indoor places. Is that just good general advice?
It absolutely is. And here's why. If everybody else makes bad choices around you, you still have the option of protecting yourself by wearing a high-quality N95 style respirator. So you always have that option to protect yourself. And masks have the highest impact, lowest cost ratio. I don't think they should be off the table anytime soon. Other things can be taken off the table, like capacity limits, but masking is such an obvious thing to maintain. If not mandates, then certainly as an option for individuals.
Now, I know that a lot of discourse online and in other social circles, of course, regarding this mask mandate change that's coming next week. And those who are looking forward to not having to put them on, shall I say, use the argument that, well, you can still do that if you want to, like you said. But when I don a mask and going inside, I'm not only looking after myself, but I'm also looking after maybe some of those people.
That's exactly right. And it matters the kind of mask we're talking about. If it's the 3-ply surgical mask, then it only works really if a lot of people are wearing them, because the idea behind that is my mask protects you and your mask protects me. If we're talking about the N95 respirators, that has a fair amount of individual protection. That's why I'm advocating for everyone to consider wearing those kind of respirator masks, especially in the context of an airborne disease, which COVID is. So ideally, we still have a lot of people wearing masks to keep the transmission down because we aren't out of the woods yet. The wave is coming down, but our hospitals are still being taxed. We have a large number of susceptible people, especially kids under 5 who can't be vaccinated. Why not try to protect them?
Now, the one thing, Raywat, that really caught me by surprise was last week when the province announced that here in Manitoba on March 15th, the same day as the masks, if you test positive for COVID-19, there's no longer a requirement to self-isolate. They still recommend it, but it's no longer a requirement. And I really couldn't make heads or tails out of that policy change. Can you?
My only understanding is that it's probably because there isn't a lot of resources to enforce it. There's no resources to do contact tracing if so many people are becoming infected. And the stress on various work environments for so many people being out of the workplace is probably unsustainable. So it's not driven by the science as much as by the economics and by the the practical aspects of what we're asking people to do. Ideally, I'd like to see people isolate, especially if they're symptomatic, and take 2 negative rapid tests to get them not isolating. Or at the very least, if you test positive, wear an N95 mask when you're around other people. That's just courteous.
Raywat, one of my biggest fears as we come out of this is that there's going to be, at some point very soon, regulators, policymakers, politicians saying we're done with that, and they're not adhering to the lessons learned over the last 2 years. And that, to me, goes to ongoing surveillance at both the international, national, provincial, and local level. What fears do you have about the lessons learned here not being applied?
I don't think surveillance will be gone. I think that's a lesson that the people who are in charge of such things have taken to heart, and it doesn't require a lot of political will or public sacrifice to maintain surveillance programs. I think they'll actually be strengthened as they should. I think things like vaccine platforms will be strengthened. The science and investment will be strengthened. The ability to call upon people to self-sacrifice for public health is compromised, though. And I don't think there'll be a lot of tolerance for doing this again, regardless of the nature of the public health emergency. So I'm hoping we fix civil society and scientific literacy and our communications platforms to be able to better engage the public and have them on board where we need them to be on board. We've lost a lot of trust. We've got to rebuild it.
Yeah, there's all sorts of divisions there. Raywat, appreciate the time. Thanks so very much for popping on with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.